The upland sandy habitats of Florida are home to some of the strangest animals in the world. Among these weird endemics is a grasshopper that seems to have mysteriously lost its wings and is so small that a full-grown adult can rest right on your fingertip. Today we're exploring a wet grassy field in a sandy pine flatwood habitat in South Florida in search for one of these elusive and strikingly tiny grasshoppers. The way we're looking for this strange creature is by slowly shuffling through the grass, looking for even the smallest amount of movement. Once we see one hopping, I need to be quick with the net to make the catch. Alright children, this right here is a grasshopper species that I've been looking for years and that I'm finally so excited to be showing you guys here. This is a little wingless grasshopper, one of the most unique species of grasshopper that we get here in Florida. As you might be able to tell by the name, these things are extremely tiny. This right here, just barely the size of my index fingernail, is a fully grown male. Now the females get a little bigger than the males do, however the females themselves are still absolutely tiny. Another thing you might be able to tell by the name is that these grasshoppers are completely wingless. Many grasshoppers are flightless, but they have wings that are too small to be able to fly, and therefore use their back legs for propulsion. However, the little wingless grasshopper is completely wingless. The full-grown adults don't even show wing buds. The little wingless grasshopper is a member of the genus Gymnosurides, which can be a very difficult genus to identify. All the species share this relatively similar pattern, being an overall kind of olive yellowish green color with a black stripe running behind the eye all the way down the body, bordered above and below by white. Species of the genus Gymnosurides are best told apart from one another by range and by looking at small differences in the shape of the cerci, or those two appendages at the end of a male's abdomen. However, here in South Florida, where we are in Palm Beach County, this is the only possible species, Gymnosurides pusillus, the little wingless grasshopper. So I don't have to worry about looking at this one too close, as this is extremely distinctive for South Florida and even Central Florida, where there are no other Gymnosurides species. Flightlessness, and even sometimes winglessness, is a pretty unusually common trait within the spur-throated grasshoppers, or the Melanoplanae, which is a subfamily of grasshoppers that all have a little bump on their throat underneath their head, which is called a prosternal process. Among the few species that are common within the Melanoplanae are a lot of small and cryptic species like the little wingless grasshopper. And for whatever reason, while most Melanoplanae do have wings, it seems that groups within the Melanoplanae that aren't directly related to one another have lost their wings independently. This little wingless grasshopper right here, which can be found in these kind of marshy areas in the middle of pine forests, which we'll get to their strange selective habitat preference later, lost their wings completely separately from other Melanoplanae that lost their wings in Florida, like some of the flightless Melanopus and Floritetic species in the Florida scrubs, and the flightless Aptenopodes species out in the marshes like this. So I mentioned something about this species' strange habitat preference, and that is because this species seems to only live in areas where a species of plant called pine lilies grow. Now pine lilies are another pretty rare species to find, and themselves also have a very specialized habitat preference of only being able to be found in kind of open, marshy, moist areas in the middle of drier pine flatwoods and other pine forest habitats. I haven't seen any of these flowers around here, but my guess is they would be around because these grasshoppers are around. These grasshoppers, the little wingless grasshoppers, are actually known to use the petals of the pine lily as a hiding spot. The petals of the pine lily are kind of concave in shape, and these tiny little grasshoppers fit almost perfectly into the petals of these pine lilies. I can tell that this individual is a male for two reasons. One, he has cerci at the end of the abdomen. The female would not have those well-developed cerci, or a subgenital plate, or a supraanal plate, or any of those well-developed appendages at the end of the abdomen. Instead, they would have a little ovipositor. And second, the body shape between the males and the females is a little different. The males have a larger head with really big eyes, whereas the females have a more proportionally looking head with smaller eyes. That's the case among pretty much every grasshopper, both of those two reasons. From the smallest to the largest, and from the flightiest to the obviously least flightiest, that trait holds pretty true among pretty much all grasshoppers I know. And I might wonder, how is not having wings an advantage for these grasshoppers? Like, why would so many different grasshoppers purposefully lose their wings if the grasshoppers that do have wings can fly longer distances and have a higher chance of escaping a predator than the ones without the wings? Well, most of the grasshopper species, especially the Melanoplanae, that lose their wings are because they live in such a specific an isolated habitat that they don't really need them to fly long distances anymore. At one point, these upland sandy habitats like pine flatwoods, scrubs, and sandhills, among other habitats in the southeastern United States, were raised sand dunes above the rest of the more lowland habitats like swamps and grasslands. So at one point when the sea levels were higher before, these upland sand dunes were extremely isolated from the rest of the surrounding areas, leading to many of the animals there evolving strange traits that are not found anywhere else in the entire world. A great example of this is how the red widow can only be found in these upland sandy areas because they had hundreds of thousands of years of isolation separate from black widows to develop color patterns that could be found on no other widow spiders around the world. And that is the same reason why a lot of grasshoppers in the Melanoplanae that could be found in scrub areas, pine flatwoods, other upland sandhill habitats have lost their wings, because being so isolated, because living in these tiny little isolated pockets separate from pretty much anyone else, flight is pretty much useless. They can still launch themselves super far with their back two legs, and actually, removing the wings removes a little bit of mass. And I'm not 100% sure if this is true, but something I've noticed in the field is that a lot of the wingless Melanoplanae can jump so much farther, especially proportionally to their size, compared to some of the winged species jumping on their own. Now, of course, the winged species can fly farther than these, obviously, which cannot fly, but these do have a little bit of an advantage in the jumping game. And because of those hundreds of thousands of years of isolation, so many of these grasshoppers have lost their wings, which is something I just find so interesting. And because of all that isolation, these wingless grasshoppers have speciated so much quicker than the winged species. In northern Florida, a grasshopper in the Genus genus that looks pretty much exactly like this Pusillus would probably not be able to mate with this South Florida Pusillus, because since these are not able to fly around, they're pretty much stuck in their little pockets. I hope you enjoyed learning all about the little wingless grasshopper, one of my favorite grasshopper species, one that I've been looking for a while, and one of the most unique species in the United States that you could pretty much only find in Florida. Let's let this beautiful grasshopper go back into this grassy field in the middle of the pine flatwoods.
If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to check out this video right here, where we find one of the strangest mantises in all of North America, and one that's extremely camouflaged and hard to find, the grizzled mantis. Enjoy!